History is quite fascinating but scary as well. Did you know there are some happenings that have been completely erased from history? Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi, is a place shrouded in a dark and haunting history, one that has largely been erased from the annals of American memory. This secluded and picturesque natural formation, resembling a large bowl surrounded by towering cliffs and lush trees, holds a chilling secret. It was here during a tumultuous period in American history that a concentration camp was established, a fact that remains shockingly absent from mainstream historical narratives. In the aftermath of the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, which technically granted freedom to enslaved Black Americans, a harsh reality persisted. The end of slavery did not equate to equality or safety for the newly freed individuals. Instead, they found themselves grappling with a rising tide of discrimination, violence, and social upheaval. As thousands of formerly enslaved Black people sought refuge in Natchez, the city's population surged dramatically, overwhelming local resources. In response, authorities took a drastic and brutal measure by constructing Devil's Punch Bowl as a concentration camp for these free Black slaves. Here they endured inhumane conditions, forced labor, extreme weather, and disease. Many succumbed to starvation, exhaustion, and illness within the camp's confines. The erasure of Devil's Punch Bowl from mainstream history speaks to a deeply uncomfortable truth about America's past. This concentration camp, with its harrowing legacy, serves as a stark reminder of the enduring struggle for equality and justice in the nation's history, a struggle that continues to shape the country's present and future. What led to the tragic fate of 20,000 free Black slaves within the confines of Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi? How did extreme conditions, brutal treatment, and the scourge of smallpox turn this camp into a nightmarish ordeal? Let's explore the depths of human cruelty and the enduring struggle for justice in this haunting chapter of history. The tragic tale of Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi reveals the horrifying fate that befell thousands of free Black slaves who were imprisoned within its unforgiving confines. In a span of just 1 year, approximately 20,000 individuals met their untimely demise, subjected to a nightmarish existence marked by extreme conditions and brutal treatment. Within the camp's walls, free Black slaves faced a cruel and unrelenting reality. The unforgiving Mississippi climate delivered scorching heat and oppressive humidity, making hard labor excruciating and leading to dehydration, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. Men toiled endlessly, enduring agonizing muscle pain, fatigue, and other severe health issues, while women and children were deprived of essential sustenance, succumbing to starvation and disease. Smallpox, a highly contagious and deadly viral infection, ran rampant within the overcrowded and unsanitary camp, leaving a trail of suffering and death in its wake. Tragically, the torment did not cease with death, as the bodies of the deceased were left for the remaining prisoners to bury where they fell, adding a layer of psychological torment to an already horrific existence. The sheer scale of suffering and loss within Devil's Punch Bowl is a chilling testament to the depths of human cruelty and the profound injustices endured by those who had yearned for freedom. This grim chapter in history serves as a somber reminder of the enduring struggle for equality and the need to confront the darkest aspects of the past to build a more just and compassionate future. The Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 was a monumental step towards the abolition of slavery in the United States, yet it did not immediately grant true freedom and equality to free Black people. In the wake of this historic decree, a harsh and deeply troubling reality persisted for those who had once been enslaved. Despite the proclamation's intent to liberate Black Americans in Confederate-held territories, discrimination and violence remained pervasive. The end of slavery did not automatically erase generations of racial prejudice, hatred, and systemic oppression. In many parts of the country, especially the South, white supremacy was deeply ingrained in society, and many white residents vehemently resisted the idea of racial equality. Free Black people faced a myriad of challenges in the post-emancipation era. Discriminatory Black codes and Jim Crow laws were enacted to enforce racial segregation and limit the rights and opportunities of African Americans. Legalized discrimination permeated nearly every aspect of life, from education and employment to housing and public services. Was Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi, a result of desperate overcrowding or a deliberate concentration camp? How did free Black individuals seeking refuge become victims of horrendous conditions, disease, and starvation within its walls? Now get ready for the haunting history and ongoing debate surrounding this dark chapter where suffering and injustice intersect. Violence against Black individuals was a grim and daily reality. Lynchings, mob violence, and racially motivated attacks were commonplace, instilling fear and insecurity within the Black community. The Ku Klux Klan and other white supremacist groups unleashed a reign of terror, targeting those who dared to assert their rights or challenge the status quo. The period following the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 was marked by a profound exodus of free black individuals seeking refuge in the promise of a better life. Many of them found their way to Natchez, Mississippi, a city that would undergo a staggering transformation during this tumultuous time. The population of Natchez experienced an unprecedented explosion, skyrocketing from a modest 10,000 to a staggering 120,000 inhabitants in a short span. What makes this demographic shift even more remarkable is that the majority of the newcomers were black residents who had fled the harsh realities of post-Civil War America. These formerly enslaved individuals saw Natchez as a beacon of hope, a city that symbolized newfound freedom and opportunity. Natchez's allure lay in its status as the largest city in Mississippi at the time, boasting a significant river port and a degree of safety under Union control. For those who had endured the horrors of slavery and the perils of post-emancipation racial violence, Natchez represented a chance for a fresh start away from the plantations and the brutality they had known for generations. Yet, as the city's population surged with the arrival of these brave souls, in search of a brighter future, it would soon become a backdrop for a harrowing chapter in American history: the establishment of Devil's Punch Bowl, a concentration camp where many of these individuals would meet a cruel and tragic fate. The tale of Natchez during this period serves as a poignant reminder of the enduring struggle for freedom and equality in the face of adversity. Overwhelmed by the sudden and massive influx of refugees, authorities in Natchez, Mississippi, were confronted with a daunting challenge. In the wake of the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation, thousands of free black slaves sought sanctuary in the city, causing the population to swell beyond their capacity to manage. Faced with this crisis, authorities made a chilling decision. They constructed Devil's Punch Bowl, a concentration camp, to contain and control the surging numbers of free black residents. It was a grim testament to the extreme measures taken during a tumultuous era, where the struggle for freedom and equality clashed with the stark realities of racism and prejudice. The conditions within Devil's Punch Bowl were nothing short of horrific. Inmates, primarily free black slaves, endured a nightmarish existence marked by forced labor in scorching heat and oppressive humidity. Extreme weather, along with the grueling physical demands of hard labor, led to dehydration, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. Meanwhile, women and children were subjected to starvation, with little access to food and water. Disease, particularly smallpox, spread rapidly in the overcrowded and unsanitary environment, claiming countless lives. These unbearable conditions, characterized by brutality, extreme weather, rampant illness, and chronic starvation, resulted in a staggering death toll, casting a long and haunting shadow over Devil's Punch Bowl's dark history. The history of Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi has sparked a historical debate that persists to this day. At the heart of this controversy is the question of whether Devil's Punch Bowl was a deliberate concentration camp or a consequence of overcrowding and dire conditions in refugee camps. Some historians argue that Devil's Punch Bowl was not initially intended as a concentration camp, but rather emerged as a response to the overwhelming influx of freed black slaves seeking refuge in Natchez. According to this perspective, the camp's harsh conditions, high mortality rates, and suffering were a result of inadequate resources, poor planning, and the chaotic aftermath of the Civil War. It is suggested that Union troops, overwhelmed by the sudden population surge, struggled to provide proper care, sanitation, and support for the refugees, leading to immense hardships. On the other side of the debate, some historians contend that Devil's Punch Bowl was indeed a site of intentional cruelty and suffering. They argue that the camp was established with the knowledge that it would subject its inhabitants to extreme hardships, forced labor, and deplorable living conditions. These scholars point to the deliberate isolation of the camp, the harsh treatment of prisoners, and the high death toll as evidence of a camp designed to inflict suffering. And that's all for this video. Subscribe if you want to watch more.